Hi, everyone. I am so excited to introduce Alessandria Schumacher, who has spent the summer working with Conservation Law Foundation on its Urban Forest Initiative. Alessandria is a Master of Public Health candidate at Emory University. In addition to her stellar background in public health and epidemiology, you're gonna have to help me with that later. Alessandria is a GIS whiz, which has come in handy for her project. Despite being fairly new at the topic of urban forestry, she jumped right into her project and made it her own. She's a fantastic problem solver and has overcome challenges like data availability seamlessly throughout the summer. One of Alessandria's greatest qualities is her curiosity. She's always looking to peel back another layer to whatever she is researching. The quality of her work has taken the project to another level that CLF could not have anticipated. To say that we've been impressed with Alessandria is an understatement. We're so grateful to have had her skills and insight as part of our team this summer, and she will be dearly missed when she goes back to school in the fall. We know that she's got an incredibly bright future ahead of her, and we're glad to have played a small role in her career development. With that, I'll hand it over to Alessandria to share more about her work with CLF this summer.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Faina, for the introduction in lieu of my mentors who couldn't make it. And thank you also to my mentors, Deanna and Tracy, for your support this summer. So my work this summer has been twofold. First, I've done research about existing tree work and health in 12 cities across New England. The goal here was to help CLF gather information to prioritize 3 cities for future urban forestry work. I went into more detail on that in the midterm presentation, so I'm going to speak more today about the literature review I've been working on and research memo I've been writing to help answer some of the questions listed here. Some of my interesting findings have been that there is no single ideal urban forest. It's very locally specific based on the climate, building density, and preferences of a given city and the people living there. Trees are often inequitably distributed across a city, but building equity into the planning process and listening to all voices is as important as, if not more important than, ultimately achieving equitable distribution of a tree canopy. This is because attitudes toward trees vary widely. So asking people about their preferences, not assuming more trees are always better, is the most important. Finally, trees can be both good and bad for health, but the context really matters, and I'll dive into that more on my next slide, please. These are much simplified versions of graphics I created for CLF. The green one shows different aspects of trees that confer health benefits, and the orange one shows qualities of trees that can harm health, and sometimes they're the same things. For example, air quality shows up on both in a certain way. Trees can remove particulate pollutant from the air, which can reduce asthma, it can reduce lung cancer risk, and reduce respiratory illnesses. But trees can also reduce pollen or volatile organic compounds, VOCs, which can exacerbate asthma and allergies. This same, pros and cons applies for a lot of different aspects of trees, but what I found and several other researchers noted is that ultimately the good usually outweighs the bad. And what's most important is selecting the right trees for the location and the community and understanding the context and what people want and what people prioritize. Next slide, please. Moving forward, CLF will use my work in selecting 3 cities for urban forestry partnerships. They'll use my graphics in communicating with community partners about the health benefits and potential unintended consequences of trees. And my research memo will help bring CLF staff up to speed on urban forestry as they expand their work in this area and bring new staff into the urban forestry work. Personally, I've learned a lot about trees, as Faina noted in the introduction. Trees are not my area of expertise. It's public health and environmental health, but I've really enjoyed this opportunity to learn more about trees and this aspect of human environment interactions and environmental health. I've gained an appreciation for the complexity of urban and environmental planning and the nuance required when thinking about a given city. And finally, I've learned that looking locally can sometimes be the most important place to look. As with trees, looking at the local context and what communities want is more important than, what a large overarching study might say is supposedly best. thank you to everyone here and all my fellow fellows for your support this summer, and I'm open to questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Alessandria, for another great presentation. So I've got a couple questions for you here, and I encourage anyone that has questions to submit them in the chat as well. So for that first project that you did on 12 cities, what types of data sets did you look at that are going to help CLF determine which of those 3 cities to focus on?
So one of my first tasks of data was looking for tree canopy data, which is very inconsistent across the country, the states, whatever scale you look at. So a lot of that was looking for data and trying to get as fine of scale as possible. So we looked for tree cover data, and then in terms of trying to prioritize like disadvantaged communities and like bring equity into the process, we were looking at the median income, percent of population that was not white, population density, and asthma rates and other health disparities. Again, a lot of this data was hard to find at a very granular level, but those are some of the data sets that are informing those decisions.
Great, thank you. I've got a question in the chat here for you about any methods or suggestions that are in place for gaining context for a particular city and their local priorities around urban forestry and sustainability.
Sure. I would say talking to people is probably the best. In reading a lot of research, there are lots of studies that look at data, and then there are also studies that do interviews and surveys. So one in particular, I was just digging into the other day, looked at 3 cities in Western Massachusetts and near where I grew up. And I was like, kind of had some familiarity with it. And it was really interesting to see how they went out and actually surveyed people of what they thought about trees. And a lot of people, the benefits people cited to trees were more about aesthetics and just the inherent good of having trees than like specifically health benefits or air quality benefits. So I think talking to people can be just as important, as not more, than looking at data in this context.